I am. Mike, I just said Bam again. I don't know why I do that.
Welcome to Perspective Shift.
Yeah, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, Frank.
Yeah.
How are you?
Yeah, we're doing really well.
Good,
Doing really well.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So I'm excited for this week's episode. This is going to be an interesting one for you guys. We've also reached out to the individual directly to try to get them on Perspective Shift, so that will be exciting. But I figure before we jump into this one, tell us about last week. So what did you do last week? You went to Sedona, right? Last weekend?
I did this, it's called Sedona Soul Adventure.
Okay.
It's a retreat they do. It's a personal retreat. So
One-on-one?
Yeah, I spent time on the phone with a gentleman when I first contacted them. And we spoke a couple times, maybe the first time like an hour and a half, and trying to get to the point of like what do I want out of it. And, I just wanted a little more clarity and stuff. That's what I'm always gearing for. Mm-hmm. So then they set up this personalized retreat. And in my case, I did 3 days.
Okay.
I think you go 3 to 7 days, I think, but I started out with the 3.
Mm-hmm.
And each day I had 2 practitioners, except for the last day. So it was 5 practitioners within the 3 days I met with individually.
So 5 different practitioners?
Yeah, exactly. And
okay.
I did stuff like, what do you call it?
And is it just you one-on-one with the practitioner?
Yes, yeah.
That's cool.
In this case, like I stayed up in Sedona. And then in every one of these cases, I actually went to their homes.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so you were at homes.
Nice.
And yeah, it was really nice. And they have it set up really cool.
Yeah.
And the way it was set up is like it was this perfect. You don't notice it, like they tell you this, but you finally realize it. But it was this perfect recipe, like what I call like a 5-course meal.
Okay.
And each course has its presentation and its reason prior to this.
The next
course.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they feed into each other. So by the 5th, and it was the final day, I met with this woman. Her name was Victoria. Mm-hmm. And it was really cool because she's very intellectual, very smart. She's formerly a surgeon.
Oh, wow.
And we had a really nice discussion. And she brought up Richard Rudd to me.
Okay.
And I never heard of him, never even heard of his information. And she also offered like a couple other books and stuff like that, which I looked at, I'm like, okay, these are cool. But I'm like, okay. And so after having this 3-hour session with her, she did some energy work with me and even discussions. And there was some breakthroughs, like aha moments I had with her. And I think it is a culmination of the other modalities I did.
Yeah, the other practitioners.
Yeah, and so it was at the very end. It's like at the end of a 5-course meal, you then like, wow, that was a great meal. And
Hell yeah.
So now it's like there's nothing left to come, so to speak. So you just start to let it all in. And so being it was in Sedona, I left her house and pretty much I was going to get something to eat. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not hungry. I just stopped and got gas and the 2-hour drive home. And I decided to listen to Paul Rudd.
Well, so real quick.
Yeah.
This Richard Rudd, how did she introduce him?
Richard Rudd, Paul Rudd.
Yeah,
oh my God.
I was just the actor.
Sorry, Richard.
But no, so today we will be covering Mr. Richard Rudd.
Yeah.
And we'll cover Paul Rudd, the actor.
Yeah,
next
we'll
week.
do that later.
But no, how did she bring him up, or why, or because that might be another cool little thing.
I guess like she was sitting there, we're having a discussion, and she realized that. And I can't really compare myself to other people she's talked about, but she did. She's like, okay, you're at a level where you actually understand this. A lot of people that come to her are at a different level.
Just learning these concepts.
Yeah, so B and I have been working with these concepts for many years. She started bringing people up, and she brought out the Gene Key books, which is this one. It's like, it's a reference book.
Okay.
It's not like a...
So she actually pulled this out.
Yeah, she pulled it out, and yep. And it's like the size of the Bible.
I was going to say, this thing is thick.
Yeah. But it seems overwhelming, but it's not. So in the back, and I'll explain it as best I can because I'm like starting to just use this as myself. Mm-hmm. There's a code. So there's 64 gene keys, all right? And that has to do with the 64 codons in the genetic makeup and how humans are. So with each one of these genes, they have a shadow, a gift, and a city.
Okay.
All right? And
real quick, city, we're talking the Sanskrit term city, right?
Yeah, not city as in New York City.
Exactly. Just to clarify for people listening.
It's city
with
a
SIDDHI,
yes,
right?
Yeah, exactly, correct. So, and that's just like the higher gift, all right? So when you actually go in, and so anyway, when I was talking to her, she thought this would be really good for me. And so I'm like, okay, I looked into it. And when I started driving home, listened to a couple of podcasts of his, it really intrigued me.
Yeah.
And then the second I got home, I ordered the book and started the online courses. And again, I'll explain this too, but the cool thing is he has an online course that's for free to start out with. You can get your own profile. Me and Mike are going to explain what the profile looks like and what it means.
Yep.
The other thing too, he also produced a app called Triple Flame.
Okay.
And I suggest get that. Again, it is free. It's like this guy's just giving stuff away. It's amazing. But that's what his whole life's work's about anyway. So when you're looking at the 64 gene keys, all right, I'm going to explain as best I can because like I said, I'm still working on it. And the reason me and Mike decided to present it today, because I think when everyone dives into it, they're going to get something different out of it. So it's like trying to explain the whole Bible. You can't. It's a lifelong journey. But
so before we dive into that, so Frank calls me, after he's coming home from Sedona, and he's like, hey, this trip was absolutely amazing, and so he starts telling me about the different practitioners he's worked with, over the weekend, all that good stuff. But he was like, hey, I've got somebody that we got to cover on perspective shift. And I'm like, oh, yeah. And he goes, yep. And he's like, I spoke with the last lady, Victoria, and this was a recommendation coming from her. You got to check this out. And he's like, jump online, start looking at his stuff. He's got, you can go online, you can enter your birth date in and some information, and kind of he has everything dialed in where using your birth date, date, birth, time, etc., very similar to like that of an astrology, like natal chart reading, you can get access to your gene keys, specifically what your purpose is, what you're here to learn, what you're here to experience, etc. And so Frank tells me about this, and I'm like, oh, this is great, especially just because like lately I've been reading about astrology, things of that nature, and I know, from my natal chart readings that I've had in the past and just similar type of activities that our birth date, time, moment we got here is very specific to the journey that we're here and on. And so that's why I was fascinated when you originally sent this over, because I was like, this is great. It's like a deep dive into our gene keys, if you will. It
is. And, what I was shocked about is I've never heard of this man, especially combing over all these type of modalities and people. But I'm glad. It's fun. It's like, it's like on Christmas, if you celebrate Christmas, but you realizing you have one more gift left under the tree. It's like, I never heard of him. And when I did, I was shockingly surprised how I never heard of this guy, because the information is revealing. And the reason I'm really excited about this stuff, this isn't just philosophy. This is practical use of how to understand it. And we're going to go over this. But I was telling Mike, when you set up your profile and you get your purpose, you have all these different, here, let me pull mine up. Just kind of.
Yeah, pull it up.
So there's your life's work. You pretty much start with like the purpose, then there's life's work. And then you go into your vocation. The pearl is the center of it, the culture. So all these things are main things. There's many more on here. I don't want to get too into the explanation, but these main ones, especially your vocation, what do you do for a living, your life's work, and all that stuff. And the way I was explaining to Mike is, and we've talked about this before. Yeah, maybe what we'll do is we'll put it up on the film.
On the actual thing?
Yeah, actual thing.
We'll have Kayla actually
we'll
bring up a chart so
we can
people
use
can
either
see
yours or mine. And what's really fascinating about this is it's kind of like when you finally understand why you're here, what your purpose is, you could stop worrying and looking for something else. And the purpose isn't what we're doing. It's the state in which we're in. And then the doing becomes natural. So the purpose is not about doing. And the way I explained it to Mike, and we talked about this before, I'm sure we used this analogy, but I'm going to use it again. So say Mike and I were hired, we were signed on for a movie. And in the movie, Mike was going to be this multi-billionaire living in a mansion, and I was the antagonist, homeless guy living right outside his gate. Okay. And he couldn't seem to do anything with me, but I pursued just laying in front of his house, Well, upon entering onto the studio set, me and Mike just walked in with our regular walking clothes and everything else, and then Mike went to wardrobe, I went to wardrobe. Mike, they outfitted him with like a $3,000, $4,000 piece suit, 3-piece suit, and they gave me rags. Now, when I realize, but if I was, when I get onto set and I realize, okay, I'm the homeless person, this is the act I'm supposed to be playing, all of a sudden I'm going to fully dive into that. But if I thought, like, I'd rather be the rich guy like Mike's playing, I'm going to disrupt the whole story, and even my story. I'm going to be agitated in my field of acting. Now, at the end of that, like at the end of any movie that's presented that way, the person living on the street could easily win the Academy Award based on their performance. So the reason I bring this up is a lot of times we get into the world and we feel like I want to be that. We get drawn in by the outside experience of, say, money.
Or just conditioning in general.
Yeah, so if you see someone that's very wealthy, you're like, I want to be that person. I'm like, well, wait a minute. I'm like, not everyone is meant to be wealthy, but it doesn't mean everyone won't prosper. Every human being on this planet will prosper. I actually have a video of Richard Rudd talking about prosperity.
Perfect.
It's different than wealth. Wealth is accumulation of stuff, which a lot of wealthy people have accumulation of stuff that don't let it go, tend to have anxiety over it. Yeah. Most people do. But prosperity is different. Now, prosperity doesn't mean you're not going to be a millionaire. You may be. Like, just like Mike got the role as playing a billionaire. He signed on for it. But so when he came in, the studio, everything set up for him to actually be able to portray a billionaire by giving him a mansion, everything else. He didn't have to come with it. So when we come into this world, we just act as playing a role. So this clarity actually helps you along the route of like, okay, I know I'm going in the right direction. So when I pulled up my chart, my profile, and I started looking at my purpose, was compromise, and I realized, man, I compromise a lot. I really do. And so when I set with the act of compromising, and you have to take the ego out, because I don't believe in compromise. Is that one of your funny stories?
Yeah, bring it up.
I remember one time me and Karen went out to dinner, and we're sitting there, and we're another couple, Dave, my partner, and Elizabeth, we're waiting on them. And I forget how it came up, but Karen talked about, you got to have compromise. I'm like, I don't believe in compromise. And then she's like, what do you mean you don't believe in compromise? I'm like, I don't believe
You're married. You don't
believe in compromise. I said, what I believe in is coming to a new agreement to where I don't have to take away. But if I compromise something, I'm going to hold a grudge against you, and it's going to come out. Just like, and then I say, I'm like, would you get on an airplane that was compromised?
Yeah, right.
No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't want to be in a relationship or any situation that's compromised. So once you get beyond the compromise, you come to, a new understanding. So yeah, I'm like, if your compromise was, I want to go here, you want to go there, well, let's go here type of thing. We have a completely new place.
Destination.
New destination, so to speak.
Yep.
There's multiple ways to explain it. But the compromise in my life, I've noticed, was about putting others before me or other things before what I'm really here to do. And I'm more of a creative type. I love to write. I love to do stuff like that. And I would often put that to the back burner to try to make more money.
Okay. Which is compromising.
Yeah, it is compromising. So, but because I think most people compromise in that field, you look at it as normal. It's just the way it is. So I do that. But I started down this journey before I actually found this. This is more clarification and deeper. When I stopped compromising, my skills or my artistic viewpoint actually is my vocation, by the way. I started prospering more. Even more money would come too. But then I would still waver, like, okay, maybe I need to put more time into this and making more money and stuff like that. And I would get this weird ding, like feeling, but I just like, whatever. Everyone has that. And then there's a couple of books I'm writing. One's I have 2 nonfiction books I'm actually writing. But I would always put them to the side because I had to worry about the wealth part of my life, making more money. So putting more time here where the money's spent, and this is just a hobby.
Compromise.
Yeah, so I'm compromising what actually I really enjoy to do. So as time went on, I slowly stopped walking away from compromising. I would do it, but it would be almost forceful. But then, dude, it's only been a week.
Yeah.
So it hasn't been that long since I've even heard about this guy.
Yeah. And diving into the concept.
Yeah. Diving in, and what's transpired in this week is crazy. So, like, I literally finished editing my book last night.
Nice, congrats.
Yeah, which I thought it was going to be like another month. Totally. I was more than halfway there, but yesterday I just got in and I just started editing it. And it wasn't like I forced myself. I actually enjoyed it. Where there were moments where I enjoyed it, but then there were moments like, I got to do it. And I would go and maybe edit 3-4 pages, not even get through a chapter.
Yeah.
So I finished it last night, but kind of coming to this conclusion of understanding, and I'm just using this example of what I'm going through with my purpose, is compromise, and I'm done compromising. But it's like you have to really go deep to know, because some people think, oh, I'm not compromising. Like, we all are. All these 64 gene keys, we all have them. But the gene keys that are in my profile are one that are more suitable. I shouldn't say suitable, but are more...
Kind of like the roles you signed on for.
Yeah, they're more paramount, I should say.
Yeah.
They're more paramount for the role I'm playing. Where the other ones are still there, and that's why you can go in. The cool thing, another way of using this book is like flick through the pages and see which gene key comes up. Okay, the 15th gene key, and read that. And a lot of times, almost like tarot or something like that.
What you need to hear at that moment.
Yeah, we need to hear. And so you can do that. But by following your own profile and dealing with that, I think the other things start to take care of themselves. This is how life works.
Yep.
It's brilliant. So yeah, it's very difficult. When you go in and start doing this work, if you choose to do this, you'll understand what I'm talking about.
Tie it back into what was happened at dinner with your partner.
Oh, I went off on the story, didn't I?
No, yeah, you're good. I'm curious.
Well, so the compromise. So what would happen? Well, the funny thing is when Dave and Elizabeth came in, and Karen's like, "Can you believe this? He doesn't compromise." And so Dave and Elizabeth and Karen were all like, you got to compromise. And I'm like, no, I don't have to compromise. I'm like, I don't think it's
No.
yeah. But then it's funny because what the funny thing is,
That's my shadow. I'm trying to.
Yeah, I'm trying
let
to.
go of
Yeah,
this.
and when I showed this to Karen, I brought that conversation up, and she just looked at me like I'm nutty. Like I got some weird validation to stop it. But I'm like, no, I don't believe any of us should compromise anything. Sometimes if people are stuck in the jam, every time we compromise, we lose a part of ourselves. We mask over our talents. We mask over everything. I'm not saying not be reasonable human beings, because compromise isn't about I have to do it my way. Compromise is like, let's come to a way where we both enjoy it, where we both come to this new place. Like if I had a house and Karen had a house, which was a point of our contention at one point.
Yeah.
But then it's like, okay, let's get a completely new house. Or I completely let go of my house, and I was completely fine with this. There was no compromise in my living that way. So, but I won't compromise in what I'm doing, what I'm here for. And whenever I do, that's that dream that feels like it's fading away. And the beauty is it's never, ever too late. I'm 56, nearly 57 years old, and I feel like I just got out of high school with the excitement of what's in front of me.
Exactly.
It's never too late. It's really never too late. So by finding this work here with Richard Rudd and the 64 Keys, it shows a pragmatic way of actually diving into this. It's not just theory or philosophy. It's actually,
Absolutely.
It works.
It gives you direction. It gives you something to, here's an area
and
I can focus on.
There's work to do, but his main work is pausing or, contemplating, not thinking. And he explains it in there, and I like the way he explains it. I've heard this before too, but the word contemplate comes from come to temple. Okay. The word temple is in there. And the way I explain, contemplating isn't thinking. It's about like closing your eyes and feeling the state of your body. So you can feel if you're anxiety, you can feel if you're at peace, you can feel your joy. So when you close your eyes and feel that, you're literally contemplating the energy. So say the energy is anxiety. If you're contemplating it, if you're just observing it, all of a sudden the anxiety starts to dissipate slowly. It's kind of like if you're driving the vehicle and you realize you're going in the wrong direction. Without even thinking, your foot comes off the gas and the car naturally slows down to better prepare itself to turn around or whatever direction it needs to go away from, go in the direction in which you want to go. Like I said, if you're doing 100 miles an hour and you realize you're going in the wrong direction, that is not the time to pull the U-turn. Yep. So by lifting the foot off the gas, you slow it down. You get to a more reasonable speed to where you can then make a U-turn or whatever you have to do. So that's what contemplation does. It's like, okay, where am I? I'm like, oh, okay, I got a little anxiety going on. Let's observe it. So in this place, like if I was here to contemplate my purpose, and I look at it, I'm like, okay, I'm compromising. And all of a sudden, when I recognize, okay, I am compromising, I start to dissolve the compromise. And then I move into the gift, which is competence.
Okay.
So I become more competent, right? And then into the higher one, it's freaking
Which is the city,
glasses. Right? Yeah. Balance. Yeah. So then it's like balancedness. So I can then all of a sudden,
what the hell is that, bountiness?
Yeah.
Does that mean like plentiful?
Yeah, plentiful.
Okay,
yeah.
Gotcha.
So you go.
I see what you're saying. We start at the shadow, which would be compromise.
Yeah, compromise, and then but you start there and you contemplate it, and then all of a sudden when you realize, you contemplate and you actually take the ego out, and you start to recognize that I do compromise. There is a compromising it. You literally, actually, in that, because that would be the 14th gene key. Mm-hmm. You literally start to lift the compromise out. You actually change that gene key forever. And then you come into competence. Okay, now I'm going from compromise. Because if you're compromising, you're going slightly left, slightly right.
I don't need to do what I want to do. Oh, this may not be my path. Oh, maybe I should just do this to appease others.
Yeah,
like that type of stuff.
Yeah, so you're not fully vested in a direction.
Okay.
And one of my other things too, I'll go over the chart, is devotion. Mm-hmm. So once you learn, compromise, when I get rid of compromise and diminish compromise, I become competence. So competence becomes my experience.
The gift.
So yeah, it's my gift. And then when I go to a higher level, it's bountifulness.
Because that's something I wrote down to share with the audience is there's 3 levels to each of these gene keys that Frank and I are talking about. And so you figure out your gene keys, and then these 3 levels include your shadow, which is your challenge that you're here to surmount, your gift, which is the creative attribute, the gift of it, the other side of the coin.
Yeah. So once you deal with the shadow, the gift naturally appears.
Exactly.
So it's not like any work. So in the field of contemplating and taking pause. So in pause, contemplation is pause, pivot, and then
merging. Yep.
So when you actually contemplate whatever is compromised, it starts to dissipate into competence. Okay. In my case, in my purpose aspect. And
you're already seeing, and sorry, the third one is the city that we talked about, which is the transcendent realization. So like you get the gift, which naturally comes from sitting with the shadow, contemplating with the shadow. The gift appears, and then from that gift you experience the city, which is the Sanskrit word we were telling you guys about, which is essentially
higher gift.
Yeah, higher gift.
Yeah, it's another way of saying it. So you're asking, have I experienced? Yes. Correct. So now there's no doubt. So right when I hear it, I got, and it's not the only thing I'm doing, but here it is. I would always waver. Should I be doing this? Should I write a book, or should I go in a different direction? I no longer say should. Mm-hmm. I know I'm writing it. Now, I don't know what's going to come of it. I may never sell a copy. That's not the purpose of it. The purpose of me is to fulfill the experience of writing the book.
Correct.
That's it. But now I'm not guessing. I'm not compromising. So therefore, I'm going to be competent in the work that I'm doing. I'm going to move forward, and we get to a higher level. Then something bountifulness comes out of it.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
So, but it's waking up thinking, should I go here or should I go there? That gives me the headache.
See, I love this technique and everything you're talking about because anyone and everyone can benefit from this.
Yeah.
This kind of gives you a playbook, if you will, of kind of the role, the contract you signed on for when you came to Earth, this school.
Yeah, it's like the actor on the set having full access to the director.
Yeah.
You have your script, but the director will keep you in line. It's like if you say, hey, what's going on here? The director's like, cut. Okay, everyone take 5. And it's like, okay, but what seems to be the problem?
Exactly.
It's like, well, I'd rather be in the mansion. It's like, no, you were hired for the homeless person. What are you doing?
Correct.
Without the homeless person, the mansion wouldn't look like a mansion.
And what Frank's describing right there, that's us in our personal lives getting out of flow. Us saying, no, I want this. I want to be like this person. Why? Because the outside world tells me this is what success looks like. This is what this looks like. Yep. And so we are our own worst enemies when we're trying to evolve in this lifetime and in these roles.
Yeah, because we think we're supposed to be a different role in the movie in which we signed on for.
And that's where 90% of us are at. I want that role.
Yeah, and because there is a lot of attention to the person, say, living in the mansion. But.
And also caveat to that, just because I guess what I want to say is wealth and prosperity are very different, and no one is meant to come here and just have like shittiness and be this homeless person who never has success or anything like that. That's not what we're saying. When you dive into your role fully, then you can experience prosperity.
The prosperity of it,
you know? And so I just want to touch on that. Like, I don't want people at home thinking like, "Oh, I'm just supposed to be this person who's supposed to do this shit."
I was using that example just for the role to be played, not to say that there are people meant to be homeless.
Yeah,
it's
because
not that,
prosperity is possible for every single person on this planet.
Yeah, we're all supposed to be prosperous, but the definition of prosperity will be different. Some people are going to be billionaires.
Yeah, you don't have to be a billionaire or even a millionaire to be prosperous.
No, not at all.
And
Again, maybe we'll dive into that video.
Should we kick off a quick video of? Yeah. So a couple things about Richard that I wrote down too, just for those listening. So he's an international teacher. He's a writer. He's a poet. I thought that was cool. He's got a master's degree in metaphysics and literature. He currently lives in England. And he's the founder of the Gene Keys, which we're going over today. So this will give you a better idea of what that is.
This will give a quick overview about the 64 ways in the Gene Keys. So let's do that one. We'll start with that one.
Hello, this is a short video for many of you who've asked questions over the years around the Gene Keys and the Gene Keys book and the audio series and the differences. And anyway, so I thought I'd give you an update about this area. So the Gene Keys book, here's the Gene Keys book, been through various editions. It's published by Watkins in London. And it's a beautiful book. I mean, looking book, and many of you I'm sure will know it or will have it already. So this was the book that took me 7 years to write, and in it is contained all the information about the Gene Keys, not the lines. People sort of think often they're going to understand about all the lines as well. That is another whole subject. It's already a big book. If I'd put that in here as well, I think it would be unmanageable. So that you can find in the Golden Path programs or in the Golden Path program books, which are called the Activation Sequence, the Venus, and the Pearl. So those are all books that contain information about your profile. These are just the Gene Keys, the 64 keys themselves. Next to this is this book, The 64 Ways. Now, after I'd done the book, I'd written the book, a couple of years later, I decided to do an audio book. Now, when I say an audio book, I wanted to do an oral, I should say, transmission of the same thing as the Gene Keys. So I went through all the keys, but from an oral standpoint. So I spoke out the transmissions instead of writing them. So they came out in a different way. And so this book, and they're kind of sister tomes, really. Like you can see, they're designed to go together. So you've got the visual, the written one, and then you've got the oral. This is the transcribed version of the oral teachings of the Gene Keys. So the 64 ways, this one, this has got a funny back. It doesn't come like that. That was a test one I'm just holding. It's the 64 ways is, many of you will know because you'll be hearing the recordings and the audios that we put out on the Pulse, our newsletter, every week. And so you hear them because we give them out. But also they're available as an audio collection. Those took about 3 years to record for me because I had to really contemplate each key in depth. And they come out in a different way from the Gene Keys themselves. They came out a little bit more subjective, a little bit more of me in them, a bit more poetic. They have quotes and things and stories from my life. So they're of a different quality or style to the Gene Keys themselves. But the two of them together, they really give you the full transmission. And obviously, this book is the transcribed version of the oral Gene Keys, right? So the thing to not get confused is the Gene Keys themselves is also available as an audio book, and that's available on Audible. It's not read by me, although I am recording it currently due to kind of popular request. And so everything is available as an audio. The audio collection, the 64 ways, these are the transmissions that came out orally that we're sharing on the Pulse. So you can also buy them as a collection of audio files, or you can buy them individually. And indeed, you get one with your profile for free, always the one of your life's work, whatever that key is. So I hope that straightens things out a little bit. And many of you who don't yet have this, it's a really lovely additional aspect to the Gene Keys. Or if you've been listening to the 64 Ways, you might enjoy also reading the transcribed versions, or vice versa. So hopefully that makes things a little bit clearer. As I said, I'm recording the audio version of the Gene Keys book and some of my other books now, and expect them to be coming out sometime in the future. So enjoy yourselves, and blessings to you on your Gene Keys journey.
All right, so that was a quick overview of like what the book. Well, he didn't really get into what the book was about, but
let's dive into how he came up with the Gene Keys too a little bit.
So
because he had an experience that caused him to write this, correct?
Yeah, he had an experience that lasted about 3 days. It was like an awakening, and he was up for 3 days and 3 nights.
And it happened a while ago, because I read it was age 29 this happened to him. 3 days, 3 nights, and he said it was like a transcendental light experience.
Yeah, so the book was finally finished and published in 2002.
Oh, so this has been out a while.
Yeah, that's why I was shocked.
Surprised
I never heard this, man.
Exactly.
But and it took him 7 years to complete writing the actual book.
See, that is cool.
So he had this 3-day. He actually happened to him twice, a 3-day download. Okay. But the first one was the profound one that brought this on. And he doesn't call it like a channeling or nothing like that. He's very he's very careful of how he words it. Like it came to him. But I believe what's happening here is all this information is already coded in each individual one of our genes, and it's nothing he did to fall into the state. He like woke up one day and it happened.
That's what he said. I was going to say.
So it wasn't like he was doing some weird meditation and it happened.
It didn't even say like if he was on a spiritual path, right? Like,
yeah, I think at some level he might have been, but yeah, but yeah, he.
But you know, it kind of reminded me of like an Eckhart Tolle. Just
Man Maharishi.
Yep.
At 16 years old, just realized.
Clicked.
Like he thought he was going to die, and then from that moment on, he just became this enlightened being that, in the essence, never worried about anything. So yeah, it was kind of like that. It's a very interesting thing, and he's a Westerner. He's from England.
Yep.
So this happened. So yeah, it took about 7 years to write the book. That's cool. And when you actually go on, I suggest everyone to go on to his website, and you can get your profile.
Yeah, you have to try this out.
Yeah. So all you need is your birth date, where you were born, what city you were born in, and also the time.
Correct.
I don't know how accurate, because there was a question on there about the time, and it says, how accurate does the time need to be? And I think you can waver on that a little bit within a couple hours. Or
I just grabbed my birth certificate, and I did the exact time when I
so I got to, because I have my birth certificate. I have the short form birth certificate, but my mom's like, yeah, you were born about 4 or 5. So I'm like, okay, I put around 5 something. So that's how it came up.
Close enough.
But so when you do that, you get this profile, and we're gonna show you what it looks like on the video.
Yeah, we'll pop that up too.
Yeah, so we'll put that on there, and then it gives you your life's purpose. Then it gets into, there's a whole slew of things, but then your life's purpose, your life's work, your vocation. The pearl is kind of the center of that. As you see, you'll see it's like a tetrahedron. And then you get into another big one is your culture. So how you're supposed to react and respond in the culture you're in, how you give your, it kind of like your vocation and your culture are kind of linked in together. Everything is actually connected and linked into it.
Well, it's funny when you think about culture too. Like Frank and I grew up in the West. We grew up in America. And so our conditioning is very different than somebody who grew up in, the Middle East, China, Russia, you name it. We all have these different types of cultural aspects, different types of conditioning, etc. And these, again, are all roles that we sign on to when we come, to planet Earth, this school that we call Earth. And so this is kind of what he developed is a modality to understand why we came here. You know, what is this purpose? What are we supposed to learn about ourselves in this incarnation? What is this that we're experiencing? And you'll know simply, like, when I put my information in and I started reading through and like diving deeper into this, you'll know the truth because it resonates with you. Like, you start reading and you're like, oh my God, like, for example, did that resonate with you? Like, this information that came up?
Oh, everything resonated with me.
Exactly. And so that's how you at home, you know, everyone, it's great to be a skeptic and all that, but you'll know if something is truth. You'll feel it, you'll know it, etc. And so we can only encourage you guys to have your own experience. Get on, fill your birthday in, it's free, etc. Do it. And then based on what you're reading, now you got a blueprint and you're like, holy shit, you know? And then this allows you to dive deeper. And what does that do? It helps you uncover your true essence, your higher self, your life path, your purpose. And this is going to help you in all areas like vocation, interpersonal, you know, personal relationships, friends, family, partners, all of the above. This is to have that whole approach to your life. And that's what I found so fascinating about this Richard Rudd guy.
Yeah. So, and also too, when you do because he has other courses you can purchase and actually they're all very inexpensive, but when you do the free one and you go into like your purpose because it deals with that, he has that audio part in it. So you listen to it. So like he was talking about that book that's transcribed. So your purpose one will be in there with him actually saying it on the video.
Oh, see,
just kind of like the video we just presented to the audience, but he's actually explaining it verbally, and they're usually like, 15, 20 minutes. So I went on to other courses where it's dealing with different, because after you do, I might be getting ahead of myself, but after you do the free course, then it leads you to like these three other ones. One's genius, love, and prosperity.
Okay.
Now, in the beginning, he explained like there was a time when he would have people do it in a certain chronological order, such as with genius, love, then go to prosperity. Okay. But then he's like, before I even heard him say this, it's just like you go to the bottom. I saw three of them, and I just decided to do the prosperity one. So I did that, and when it pulled up, he started talking about like, oh yeah, it was designed to doing these orders, but over the years we realized we didn't have to. I'm like, okay, good, because I chose this one. I don't have to go back to the front of the line or the back of the line, I should say. So, and when you go in that deals with the prosperity a portion of a life, but it deals with all the attributes, such as like obviously prosperity has everything to do with what I'm devoted to, my vocation, the pearl, the culture, and even my purpose. And I'm going to pull up a video. We're going to talk about maybe on the next one, how he defines prosperity.
Perfect. I said we dive right into that one.
All right, perfect.
So as Frank is pulling that up, you guys remember when we did like Dr. David Hawkins, right? He created this scale, this letting go, these levels of different consciousness. It's very similar to what Richard Rudd's developed here. He's developed a scale, something you can look at and reference on your own journey. And so that's really what I want Frank and I to be able to convey to anybody listening today is, hey, this is kind of a scale, a blueprint, an opportunity to dive deeper into your purpose.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up, because when you look at the shadow, the gift, and the city, those are different frequencies. So the shadow would be in the negative realm of frequency. You're dealing with the same subject. But then when you can transmute it and change it into a higher level, you get the gift, and even higher, you get the city. So you're dealing with the same situation from different frequencies. So,
and then where you learn to become that alchemist.
Yeah, if you start looking at, there's only two different categories of frequency, and there's one is love and one is fear. So the city would be in the state of fear. So when I face that,
you mean the shadow?
I'm shadow. Sorry, the shadow is the fear, and then the city would be the highest state of love.
Yep.
But when I actually put my attention first into the fear part, like why am I scared, and I pull that close, why is there fear here? You literally transmute it into the gift.
Yeah.
It's simple, but most of us run from it.
Well, and on that note, another thing Richard talks about when I was researching him all this week is he speaks about once you pinpoint this shadow aspect and you sit in contemplation with yourself, like Frank was just talking about, you actually burn away this shadow.
Yeah, it's
how does he phrase that?
It's gone. You lifted it out of your. It's almost like if you had a computer program and you had
Great
some
example.
some software, but it was infected, and once you got rid of that, it's gone.
Yeah, removing that
you remove it.
programming.
Then but even though these you get your profile, the main ones that are dealing with your life, but there's other you can go through all 64 and still remove stuff. But I believe when you focus on the main ones, the other ones start to take care of themselves.
Yeah, start to
There's
fall into place.
in other words, there's always work to do. So once you get into the gift, okay, that's cool. Well, let's go to the higher realms of the city. So there's always room to go. But once we get out of the shadow part of it, then life is extraordinary. Yeah. But it never ends. Like there is no ceiling to the city. It just keeps growing and expanding, type of way of explaining it. So that frequency keeps growing and building on that. But it's time that humans get out of the fear state and get into a state of love. And then there are multitudes of frequency levels of love. It's beyond. But once we get out of that, and like the reason you mentioned David Hawkins, David Hawkins' scale goes from 1 to 1,000. 200 is where positivity starts.
Yep.
So everything below that. So once you get into the gift, now you're in the realm of 200 if I'm comparing it properly. I don't know if I am, but then everything else goes up from there.
Yep.
And then the city would be, the top of that would be 1,000.
Yeah, 900.
Yeah, exactly. So once you start to do this, and you can actually see your life, like I literally noticed something, and I've been doing this work for a long time. I hope, 30 years, been pulling apart. I realized something was wrong 30 years ago and I needed to investigate. This year, it was like finding out that you can ride the bumper cars. It really was. And
Truly.
I'm tall enough now.
Hey, here's a map.
Last year, I couldn't do it because I was too short.
Yep.
And now it's like you get to ride the car type of thing. And so it's an exciting thing for me to dive into. And that's why I sound like I'm all over the map here because I'm just learning about it myself. But I just felt it was nice to introduce this. I think at some other point we'll probably have him on the show.
I was going to say we'll get Richard on,
and
we can dive one-on-one with him about these concepts with you guys.
Right now, my excitement is making me go all over the place. But
no, honestly, I think you're explaining it great, and this is a very powerful and profound tool that's at our fingertips that gives us more insight. And again, guys, give it a shot. It will resonate. So one thing I learned on my journey is, like, if somebody one of the biggest things that I realized on my path and on my journey is I now, when something is shared with me, I don't need an outside person to tell me, oh, this is true. Like, oh, this is right and this is wrong. I know simply by how that feels, what we're talking about, how it resonates, etc. I know, is this for me or no, this is not. So I encourage everyone, because that's what I did with this Gene Keys, is I got on, I was like, hey, I need to see this for myself. And then as I began to dive into it, not only did it resonate, it opened my eyes to different aspects that I was like, oh my God, I never even knew that needed to be something uncovered or looked more into. And so it was like Frank was saying, it was like getting a map finally, being like, hey, here's some cheat codes. Like, get in there and look at this shit.
It simplifies it. Like you said, it's like having a GPS in your car now. Now you don't have to pull the map out on the hood of your car as you pull over on the side of the freeway to make sure you're going in the right direction.
Exactly.
This kind of takes that guesswork out, but the work has to be done. You still have to get in the car and drive in that direction in order to fulfill the process in which you're here to do. Yep. So this helps take the doubt out in order to fully dive into it. So like if I came here to do a certain thing, say I have the inkling to write a book, well, the universe is saying, you need to write this book. Now, if you don't do it in this lifetime, I'm aware that I'm infinite. But in the lifetime where I don't do it, there's going to be agitation that's going to be within my body. So once I stop moving in that direction and follow my purpose and process without any doubt, all of a sudden I feel great. I don't even need the book to be sold to anybody. That's the point we're trying to make. That's really the prosperity.
That agitation, that pull at you begins to lessen and lessen and lessen.
Yeah, like anyone that knows, if they had $1,000 in their pocket, if they could just flip it out and give it to someone to get rid of the anxiety, they would do it. So we would pay any amount of money to feel good.
Yeah.
Well, we don't need to do that. We just need to let go.
Well, look at all of the most popular industries that exist in at least Western culture here in America. Everything is centered on how can I feel better? That's where everyone is spending their money. How can I feel better, look better, etc.? That's where we spend our money.
Yeah, and it's not outside of us. Now, when we go in and discover that feeling, then we express it outwardly. So we're not here, me and Mike are not here to talk about taking away from the experience of owning a big house or having money. But if it's if it's paramount in your experience, you'll experience it. But stop thinking about it, worrying about it. It'll show up. Yeah. Trust in the system.
And I think this video you have pulled up will help share a little bit more on the prosperity versus
prosperity
wealth idea.
Yeah, he does a really nice job of explaining this. So here we go.
Hello. I'd like to talk today about success, what I call the cult of success. And I'd like to dismantle some of the myths around the cult of success. And this is in the framework of prosperity. You know, in my teaching with the Gene Keys, I have a teaching called the Pearl. And the Pearl is about the true nature of prosperity, and it redefines for us as individuals, but also for the whole of humanity, what prosperity truly is. Because we've been, tricked, duped, distracted from the true nature of prosperity. And, it's quite a thing to dismantle it. So let's get stuck in. Think about, I often say from these teachings of the Pearl, think about yourself at the end of your life, and then you're looking back over your life and you're thinking, what has mattered the most to me, and what have I really got to show for my life? And you might assume that you're going to think in terms of achievement. What have I achieved? But in actual fact, when you're faced with death, you can't take any of that achievement with you. You have your memories, and what are those memories made up of? Those memories you've accumulated and stored. And have you lived a full life, a fulsome life, a life in which you have impacted others in a beneficial way? You've helped others. You've served something. You've made others' lives better in some way. That these are the kind of things that really are essential when we get right down to it. And also, have you had time to really be with the world? Have you had time to connect with those you love and really build friendships? And have you given time to that? Have you given as much time as possible to, being outdoors or enjoying the beauty of the world and enjoying your own company? And being at peace. Very few successful people have deep peace. Very, very few. I don't believe I've ever met one. And I've been around in the world a lot. So it's something to consider, because the people who do accumulate a lot of money and a lot of wealth and a lot of stuff, they often then realize, I need to get rid of this. I need to simplify things. Because it becomes a weight on your shoulders. Managing all that, even if you pay someone else to do it, you then have to worry about them, and you're it's no end of complexities you're creating for yourself. So many of us, especially the younger ones among us, are really we're being very strongly conditioned that we need to be successful, or what the world considers as successful, and the world considers success as some form of achievement. And it's interesting to me because recently I read a kind of summary of from my son's school. And as often happens when it's like an alumni newsletter, and what it does is it speaks about the people who've achieved things and what they've gone on to do and all this kind of stuff. And what's really interesting is that it kind of mentions the people who have gone on to university and achieved things, and they've started businesses and that kind of stuff. You see, you know, it's like those are the people that get the mentions. You know, the people that are just living simple kind of lives, you know, and they're happy, or maybe they got married and they have a child, but they're living, you know, those people aren't often mentioned, you know, because it's not news to people. But actually, those people are often, not always, but often quite contented, you know. And I'm really thinking of this wonderful quote also by Thomas Merton, Catholic monk and inspirational spiritual teacher and writer. His advice to his students was, be anything you like. Be madmen, be drunks, be bastards of every shape and form, but at all costs avoid one thing: success. And I love that. I love that. You know, the fact that the planet, our planet, doesn't need more successful people. You know, what is a successful person? I mean, you have to define that for yourself. But, you know, what the planet really needs is, you know, contemplatives, lovers, you know, storytellers, poets. It needs musicians. You know, it needs people who really tune into the creative spirit at the heart of Gaia. You know, gardeners. You know, it needs stewards. That's what we all ultimately are. You know, because success comes at an incredible cost, especially modern day success. In order to earn your multi-million, you know, thing, although you may have helped, you know, many families, and, you know, I'm not against wealth, right? But I'm saying, I'm just laying out some questions for us to consider. You know, so along the way, there's a lot of resources that are consumed in the pursuit of success and wealth.
Yeah, I like how he explains that, because that is a lot of it. Like
that was great.
There are people that are actually going to come here that are going to attract a lot of money, but they weren't trying to do it. Mm-hmm. It's like there are people that are successful or well known, but they weren't trying to do it. Like Eckhart Tolle, I used him as an example.
Great example.
Like he's very well known in the world. I think
millions of copies of his book.
10 million copies of his book.
Yeah, I was going to say he's a bestseller.
Yeah, but I don't think he wasn't trying to sell 10 million copies of his book. It just so happened that society or the world was ready for hearing his message, and he just happened to write it on a book, because he could easily sold 1,000 copies. Yeah, you know. But so he wasn't outwardly trying to do that, but it happened. So that's going to be part of people's roles. But if you're trying to look at the outside world and try to get to these benchmarks of what success is, you're personally going to suffer, and then people around you are going to suffer for it as well, because we're into action. Because even within these gene keys, there are these universal gene keys too. They're not just individualistic; they're also universal to all of them. A little technical difficulty, but
difficulty.
So this week's when you sign up for the to get the email, this week was Gene Key 55, which has to do with victimization. And when you contemplate that, now it's the only one out of all 64 that only has 2. So it has the shadow, which is the victimization, and then both the gift and the city are the same. It's freedom. So we step out of, and this seems to be universal, and this is something that we're dealing with, and I talk about this all the time, it's the victimization within us. So we start to contemplate, like, you know, okay, my life would be better if I had more money. That's a victim comment. Mm-hmm. And the victimization on this planet spreads out through all different ways of looking at it. But once we overcome it, individually and collectively, we'll live in a free society. Yeah. And I don't mean freedom of choice, like we have like the choice to go here or there or whatever. But slavery is still something that's in us. All of us. I don't care what color you are. Mm-hmm. If you're showing up at a job every week to pay your mortgage so you don't get kicked out of your house, you don't like your job, that is a sense of slavery. Mm-hmm. Why aren't you liking what you're doing? You're not here for your life's purpose. Correct. But, you know, when you sit there and contemplate this, you go into it and contemplate your victimization, it starts to peel away. And then when you enter into the gift of freedom, into the city of freedom, it will actually show you how to get through in this world. It doesn't mean you jump off a cliff without the parachute. When you jump, the parachute, is well laid on your back, and you know where the ripcord is. Mm-hmm. So by going first into the shadow and lifting that up, everything else starts to present itself. Yeah. And it becomes, when you're in a state of freedom, it's easier to make the choice that's moving in the right direction. But when you're in a state of fear, your choices keep you in the state of fear. But they could be distractive ones that don't really ever get you out. Like, we could have these momentarily distractions. Like, if you're feeling bad, eating a piece of chocolate will temporarily make you feel better. But once the chocolate makes it into your stomach and it's no longer salivating in your mouth, that emotion comes back. Yep. So we don't want to hide these anymore. We want to bring them. We want to go right to the shadow and contemplate it and see, what is this? Why am I holding on to this? And once you recognize you have it, you get the ego out of the way, it naturally dissipates and lifts.
This is a perfect segue to one of the clips that I selected. Do you have the judgment clip, the self-judgment? Because that would be a good one for us to roll into after this one, based on what we're just talking about here. Because a lot of us,
this one here.
We're judging others, we're judging ourselves, and this clip kind of resonates with what we're getting at here.
Yep.
Let's dive into it.
Here you go.
When we worry about what others think of us, it's a very human trait. When we worry about what others think of us, are we really worried about their judgment? Are they really worried what they're going to say about us or they're going to think about us? I would question that. I would say, actually, what we're really worried about, what we're really afraid of, is our own self-judgment, because we are scared, but we don't see that we're going to judge ourselves. So they may say something negative about us, but actually we're going to agree with it. So that's actually what we're really afraid of. And I think that's a really important beginning insight. So really look at that in your life. I invite you to really look at that. When you consider how many things are motivated by your wish to be seen in a good light by others, your wish to be liked, to please others. And those things are deep in us. And even like if you're a rebellious type who says, I don't care what anyone thinks of me, actually you're still in a reaction to that same fear. You're just in a reaction to it, so you're still caught in a little bit by its loop in a dynamic. So these are great things, I think, to consider when you think about yourself and you're thinking about all the actions in your life that may be motivated by whether or not you're going to judge yourself unfavorably according to what someone else thinks or says, or what you project that they might think or say. And, that's that's a big thing, especially when it comes to like thinking of our parents and, our peers and all those around us, who might be in judgment over us in some way, especially if we make a cock up.
I like that. What I've noticed when I would find myself judging, I would sit there, and even before finding out about this man's work, I'm like, why am I judging? And when I let go of it, it was like I let go of a brick I was carrying in a backpack. Yeah. So judgment is not like, it's actually heavy. Mm-hmm. So judgment isn't not just to give up so you don't feel bad. I'm like, it's literally a weight. It's another brick in your backpack to carry.
Slowing us down.
Yeah, and if you're judging everyone outside of you, you have to judge yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you're judging other people based on yourself. And then if you're judging yourself, and the premise of judging is so backwards because we don't know enough to judge anything.
And I think that's what's so powerful about what Rudd's saying right here, which is, hey, it's not so much you're worried about others judging you, and it's the feeling you have because of the sting of you buying into it, saying, I am that way and I shouldn't be, so we're not afraid about some random person, or even not random, a friend, family, whatever, judging us. It's more that we actually know that to be true or see the judgment. We're judging ourselves is what he's getting at, which is we know in that area, it could be improved upon or it could be this, whatever. And so the judgment side of things is very, very intertwined because the judgment we're seeing, and this is, again, just a great example of the reflection of what this world is. The more we judge others, the more we experience judgment. The more we worry about judgment of others, the more we're actually internally judging ourselves. And he says it brilliantly here, and he explains it very, very pointedly and, easy to understand. And this applies towards all different gene keys that we're going over. This applies to prosperity versus wealth. This applies to everything.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, we're so worried about being judged, and we're so cautious, or we're so I even like how he said, he's like, some people will say, like, you're the more rebellious type, and you're like, oh, I could give a shit what other people think about me. And that's who I was when I started my journey. I thought I didn't give a shit what other people thought.
But that's a judgment. Yeah.
Exactly. And I was just on the other side of it, and I absolutely was afraid. I absolutely was tied. But that's where I started on my journey,
when we say I don't care what other people think, you obviously care what other people think.
Shit a lot.
I don't care what anyone thinks.
Yeah. But that's where I started. And so I remember, and so when he said that, I was like, man, this resonates with me.
Yeah. And that's the thing is, one thing I've learned to do is discern between judgment and observation.
Yeah.
So observation is just like, this is cool, where judgment is like, that shouldn't be happening. And with the observation is how I feel about what I'm observing. Am I judging it, or am I simply just observing it? Mm-hmm. And even now, like, it still hits me. I still get hit with stuff. Like, Karen was talking about something earlier, and it had nothing to do with me, but it had to do with something she was going through, and I took on that feeling. But right when I noticed it, I'm like, I let go of it. Mm-hmm. So I'm getting better at noticing not to take on, because what happens is in the past, when I take it on, by the end, I'm telling you, you need to
try this, do this.
Yeah, I try to fix it for her, and I'm like, if she can't fix it, I need to come down there and fix it?
Yeah,
because by me fixing it, I can get rid of this feeling, but I don't. Yeah. Because that feeling was something I grabbed onto, I got caught up in because it was judgment. Yeah. And when I realized, when I let go of judgment, it just is. And all of a sudden, life works out brilliant for you. It's something you have to trust in and discern. Because a lot of people they're like, well, if I let go of judgment, I'm going to be taken advantage of. I'm like, well, that's the definition. But if you let go and become free, nothing can touch you, because you're at a higher plane where nothing, like, traffic is only for people stuck in cars on the freeway. But the helicopter can go in any direction, isn't restricted by anything.
Yeah.
And that's the level, as an example, we're trying to get to. That would be the gift in the city, would be just like a bird.
And this judgment stuff, like what we're talking about, what Frank and I are sharing here, like this, guys, this is the real work. We grew up in a society, that, something like that comes up. Well, it sounds like it's time to go to the bar. It sounds like it's time to go clear your head and play some golf. We're constantly taught to shove our shit down and just, hey, that will pass. And it does pass, but then it resurfaces. And so these gene keys, these concepts that Frank and I are talking about today, this is the real work. Yeah. And so, sure, Western society says, go take a vacation, go, drink it down, go party with your friends, go do that. Like, we're taught to simply numb these feelings our entire life. And we're taught that is normal. And we're taught that that's how society works. Well, you just deal with it.
Yeah, because it works temporarily.
Yeah,
So, but what we're getting at, too, is like when you look at it's funny because like he mentioned this in one of his talks. When you look at the Eastern philosophy, they didn't use imagination like we do. So there's a difference. Here's the discernment. When you're in a celebratory place, having a glass of wine is the perfect thing to do.
Yep.
So it's not about not drinking the wine or not going out to party. But if you're trying to forget life by drinking the wine, it's going to be tragic for you.
Yeah, well said.
Tragic might be a stretch, but
I know what you mean.
But if you keep doing it, but if you actually get into a state and discern what's the difference between celebration and trying to forget, there's a huge disparity in that action you'll take. But if you're celebrating and drinking a glass of wine, it's just going to express that a little bit more. So we're not saying don't do this. Don't go out and go to parties and stuff like
or
that.
play golf or anything.
Yeah.
Whatever. Do what you got to do.
Yeah.
But when you're using it to mask something or
Yeah.
to forget about something, or that's how we know, there's something here that needs to be uncovered.
Yeah, and when we get into the state, when we move out of our shadow into the gift, everything that we do, such as going to a party and playing golf, like Mike said, or whatever, becomes this enormous expression of joy, just like when we were children. Children were happy, therefore they went to the playground. The playground did not make them happy. The playground was just an expression and a way to perpetuate the happiness, continue it. So the outside world is an expression of how we are. So if you have a lot of stuff out there and you live in a place where it's cluttered, I'm like, it means you're expressing anxiety inside you.
Yeah.
It really does. Because there are people that have a lot of money that have like 3 items in their house.
Mm-hmm.
They like, even Elon Musk talked about he got rid of like 5-6 houses again.
I think he got rid of them all. I think he lives in this small, one...
Yeah, I don't like. Yeah, you always hear different stories. I never sat and talked with the man, so I can't really speak of it. But I remember he talked about he had like 5 or 6 houses and he sold them all.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't because it was because it was keeping him. Like if you had 5 or 6 houses, every once in a while you have to think about them.
Yeah.
Well, if you didn't have any houses, that's one less thing you have to think about.
You got to manage them.
Yeah. So yeah, exactly. So
I need to make sure this
he's trying
is
to
taken
manage
care of.
4 companies. So managing 5 houses was like, that's just too much. So I have to become a little more
lean.
Yeah, exactly. So as we do this, it doesn't matter how much money you have. It's like you want your life to be simpler and easier. You can be simple and easy person living in a mansion as well. You can. So we're not talking us out of that type of stuff. Yeah. But do not make that your goal. Yeah. That's a weird goal.
That's a weird goal.
It is a weird goal because think about like before Lifestyles of Rich and Famous came out with Robin Lynch, no one knew about this stuff.
Yeah.
Right? And then also now everyone's got to have that kitchen and that bathroom in their house, and they're driving themselves nuts to get it. I'm not saying don't have that, but don't make that your goal. Make your goal being happy and peace. And then all of a sudden, when you're happy and peace, more people come around you. More prosperity comes your way. Things happen. All of a sudden, next thing you know, it's like, oh my God.
That was perfect. Yeah. And so well said. That's exactly how it works.
You then emerge. Yeah, come into it.
Because another concept I see, bleeding through all of this too, is resistance, just straight like physics and, quantum physics and everything Frank and I talk about on this show. The more we need something, the more resistance we're putting on something. So the more I'm not happy until I achieve this, or this is the only, multi-millions is the only end route for me to find the peace and happiness I know I deserve. All that is you're putting an extreme amount of resistance onto the energy. And how do you allow energy to flow? You remove resistance. And so you're actually doing the opposite. Physics-wise speaking, like scientifically speaking, you are not moving yourself further by doing this. You're putting more pressure on yourself, more resistance, and that resistance keeps this energy from flowing like it should.
Yeah, because that was a great point. And to add to that is, if you want something, it means you aren't it and you don't have it and you'll never get it from that vantage point.
Correct.
So that's basically the art of the law of attraction. Mm-hmm. So the law of attraction shouldn't be a physical thing you're attracting. It should be a state that you want to be in. And guess what? It's in you. Just like the 64 gene keys are in us. But there's shadows blocking so look at them as 64 tools in our body to attributes, but we're blocking them. Mm-hmm. We're covering them over. There's not light coming out of it. But once we sit and contemplate with the shadow side of it, we actually turn it on like a switch. Mm-hmm. And it's like, oh my God, holy shit. Look what this offers me.
Yep.
Look at the gift that came from it. It's like, but if you just had 64 gifts laying around, but they were all packaged in a box, well, you got to open them up.
Yep.
So what Richard here is teaching us is how to go sit with it and open that box and see what's inside, because it's yours. It was given to you at the moment you were conceived. And now we're realizing, oh my God, look at this gift. Look what I can do. I've been wanting this my whole life. I'm like, yeah, because it was
It's
yours.
always been yours.
It's because you asked for it. That's why.
It's always been yours.
Yeah, that's the funny thing is. And that's why when you go and do the profile, you realize it's paramount for your life. And you're like, wow, I can't believe. And when you're honest with yourself and get out of the way of trying to be somebody else, you realize this, yeah, you have this gift. And it's a great gift. No one else's gift is better than yours. But if you think it is, you're going to...
And when you begin to experience your gift, you will also know that there is... there is nothing better than your gift.
Yeah, it's like I'm home.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And
we got one more video clip for you guys
we got
today.
one more clip. We'll put this on there and,
I like this one, too. It talks about like the childlike state that, Frank, you often reference.
Because I am a child.
So many things can overwhelm us in life. Our responsibilities, our families, our work, our mind, our wounds, grief, our loss, suffering. So many things can overwhelm us. Time, just being in a body, just being in this world is sometimes overwhelming. And some of us are more apt to be overwhelmed than others. What it is it's the raw energy of chaos. And chaos is, the ancient alchemists, medieval alchemists, they call it the massa confusa, the chaos of the elements, the very beginning of the world. So they say that the world began from the swirling of the elements, which actually is kind of true. And we can apply that in a way to our lives, because sometimes, we feel like everything's just in a swirl and we can't find any coherence. And we can't find any peace. And we can't even find a breath for ourselves. And that's so challenging. So how do we transform that? Well, the first thing is to understand that it's a pregnant state. And that there is something, it's like all these shadows. There's something in it for us if we have the courage to dig a little deeper into the pattern. If we are simply adrift on the waves, a victim of it, then it's very difficult for us to separate ourselves from that feeling of overwhelm. And therefore, it's very difficult and challenging for us to unlock its benefits, its potential secrets. Because the essence of these teachings are that every shadow contains a gift. Every difficult state is actually a launch pad for an awakening inside us. Overwhelm being one. So think about a child. The child swims in the currents of chaos, and yet they're not overwhelmed. And when I say chaos, I mean that they have no rhythmic pattern imposed from the outside. I mean, we as parents, whatever, impose our patterns, but the child just moves randomly, spontaneously. If you watch a child at play, you'll see that they just pick things up, they throw them down, they put them in their mouth, they chuck them, they don't care about where it ends up. They're just on to the next thing, and then the next thing, and then the next thing. And there's a real beauty to that. And yet as adults, obviously we learn that we can't live like that. And yet, internally, it's possible that we can. Externally, we would create chaos. But internally, there's something inside us that yearns for that state of innocence again, that state of freedom. And that state of freedom is not so far from the overwhelm. You could kind of see like this, it's just too much. But then if there's just the smallest shift inside us, then we wouldn't experience it as overwhelm. We might experience it as adventure or play.
I love how he tied being overwhelmed into there at the end, the childlike state of play, and how he explains like what often that we experience as an overwhelming feeling, with just a change of perspective, we can be back in that childlike state of awe, knowing, no stress, no worry, understanding this will work out. And I love that clip.
Yeah, because now you're taking so overwhelmed would be considered in the series. It would be the shadow. Mm-hmm. So when you see something bad coming on, get excited, because that's about it's a catalyst into a gift. Rather than having a box you have to open is so laborious. I'm like, no, there's something that you actually asked for in that box. Now you want to go and investigate the box, rip the paper off or whatever is on it to allow to expose it. So next time you start to see overwhelmment, anxiety, realize, don't run from it. It's a great gift that's about to be presented to you. So pull it in. Fear, pull it in. Anxiety, pull it in. Depression, pull it in and sit with it, contemplate with it. And out of it comes this beautiful flower.
Picture a world like where, you went into your doctor and you're like, hey, doc, I am extremely depressed. And your doctor's like, this is great. This is great news. Hey, something here we're on to something.
Yeah.
That's a world that's possible.
Yeah.
Which is, guys, we are looking at things.
That's why they call psychologists quacks.
Yeah, right. This is why, guys, like we've been taught that we're just like burdened, and that these things that happen are just painful things that we must carry. But the everything, and that's what's so great about the Gene Keys and what Richard Rudd is talking about. Every experience in your life that you're experiencing suffering, on the other side of this is a gift.
Yeah, it just hit me, like this analogy.
Yeah.
So say when you're early on, people talked about boxes, like say cardboard boxes, was something you should stay away from. You can get hurt opening them. Right? But then you keep asking for these gifts. But unfortunately, these gifts come in cardboard boxes. Mm-hmm. So now you have a culmination of all these boxes around your house because, they come to you. But yet in the back of your mind, I'm like, how come I never get anything I asked for?
Yeah.
Well, they're in the boxes. The part of it, you just somehow someone created tremendous fear in going close to the box and opening up to see what's in it. But you just think, no, that's an evil thing. It's called a box. I have to avoid it. I have to get rid of it. Yep. So I create a whole new room and I shove them in there. I campaign against cardboard. I do all this stuff, but it keeps coming. I can't stop it. Mm-hmm. So then I keep running and I keep moving and I keep doing this. But yet what's in the back of my mind is I keep asking for these things and they don't come. But they come in a secure place in the box in order for you to open it. So all of these shadows are actually gifts unto himself that haven't been opened. So start looking at your shadow as the opening of the gift and then see what comes out of it.
Very well said.
Not run from the shadow, but actually, I'm like, okay, what am I going to learn today?
Well, that depression, that pain, depression is that's cardboard box.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so when we look at these things and as they start to happen, you're like, oh, God, this is a lot. What is the gift on the other side of this? How exciting would that be if we lived life that way? And we can. We absolutely can. And that's what these different teachers have been telling us for thousands of years. That's what Richard Rudd is sharing in the
Richard Rudd is, to use my example, gives you a bunch of cardboard boxes you have to open. And the part of the opening is the part of it is the shadow, and then you go into the gift and then into the city. So, me and Mike, we typically, when we bring up a topic or a person, we've studied them a lot more than the week. We're like, let's just do it because we're excited about this. So what we suggest people to do is, whoever wants to do this, dive into his work. You go onto his website and you can just find him on Richard Rudd.
RUDD, right?
Yeah, RUDD. Yep. And also too, he has an app you can pull up on your phone called the Triple Flame. It's free as well. The cool thing is, there's many things this app, I'm finding out new things this app does, but one of it is it's the pause. So they have like a 3-minute, a 5-minute, a 10-minute. But just do the 3-minute to start out with. You can actually schedule it. There's a part on there to schedule it where it pops up. So roughly every 3 hours, you pause for 3 minutes. You can do it in form of music. You could do a guided. You could do a silent one. It's your preference is a journey. I think it's a silent, guided, music, and journey. So they're all different. I typically do the music, and there's different selections of music you can pick. So, and I've been kind of already doing this, but this app now just reminds you to do it. And also, when you get into understanding the contemplation of life and start to do it, those things you're contemplating, those gifts, or what they call the shadow, all of a sudden turn into gifts. But if you don't contemplate it, you just keep running from it. So that's it. And
so this app gives you the ability to kind of check in with yourself multiple times throughout the day.
Yeah, and you could set it up. You could set it up
that.
on a timer, and so it reminds you. And again, 3 minutes every 3 hours. Come on, like
we can all find 3 minutes.
Yeah, you can. And what it does, it makes you more aware of the gifts around you. Mm-hmm. And then also too, if you go on his website, you do his profile. There's also a free course. All right. There's other courses on there. Yeah,
right
he's got a multitude of different courses, and they're not expensive. Like I can't believe how inexpensive it is. But there's one for free, and even if you just do that, it will change your life.
Give you more.
Doesn't mean you have
insight.
to keep going down the road. Like I like to completely dive in and investigate. That's my personality. But it's not necessary to go further than just understanding your life's path. His book, I think, is on Amazon for like this Gene Keys book I got. And it's a reference book. So you go to the back.
Yep.
In the back of the context, they'll have all 64, 1 through 64 genes, and they'll tell you the shadow, the gift, and the city. And then in there, you can go right to the page and read about it in a little more in depth.
Especially these ones that are more focused in your blueprint or timeline or map of your experience.
And again, to bring up too as well, if you sign on for his mailing list, every week you get an email with the gene key of the week, which is more universal. And again, that's free as well. And that comes in a video form, which is cool. You just sit there and listen to it. It's about 17 minutes. And like I said, this week it was Gene Key 55 that had to do with victimization.
Nice.
And when you listen to it, it's like, yeah, okay, everyone thinks they're not a victim. Or some people do, but some people think, I'm not a victim. I'm like, yeah, there's attributes in me that I'm holding victimization to. Because if I say I don't have enough money or enough time, that's a victim statement. Correct. And all of a sudden contemplating, I'm like, well, why do I feel that way? And all of a sudden I lift it. I'm like, okay, I'm lighter. What is lighter transfer into? Freedom, And then one day you get into a place where that no longer comes up. You feel the urge come up, but you don't pick it up. You don't look at it. You just let it go on by. You remain in the state of freedom.
I think anyone and everyone can benefit from the information that Richard Rudd is sharing with the Gene Keys. Very similar to that of I know when I saw my natal chart on an astrology reading, that's the closest thing that I can compare this to. And I remember getting that and reading through it and being like, oh my God, like there's so much insight here. And that's the exact same feeling I felt when I did this Gene Key exercise, that Richard Rudd developed and experienced over, a 7-year course or a 7-year timeline. There is so much to dive into here, but you can start with the main aspects of your experience. And I think that's what's cool is you get that insight and then you can dive deeper and deeper and deeper because there's something we can learn from any one of these 64 gene codes, and we all possess all 64 codes.
Yeah, and like when you look at this book and the size of it, don't get overwhelmed because he breaks it down to it's so simple. That's the thing about this. I haven't seen anything as simple as this thus far that I'm using in order to lift these unwanted shadows out of my system. And it can seem overwhelming, and maybe I'm presenting it as overwhelming because there's a lot here, but it really isn't. And do not rush to it. This is a life journey. Yeah. This is not something to get through to. Don't look at it as a goal.
Yeah.
It's just
a task to be completed.
No, you're not going to complete this. That's the thing.
That's it.
You're just going to keep learning about yourself and learning about the world around you. And the more peaceful you become, the more freedom you become, the easier and more subtle
and evolved being that
yeah,
you become.
Yeah, and life, when you live life in a more subtle way, it's like every master, it doesn't matter what they're master in martial arts or anything. It's the little intricate subtleties that make them a master, not the clunkiness when they were first starting out. So like the great musician plays the violin more subtle than when they first, and you can't put your finger on the subtlety, but you can notice it, and that's the brilliance of it. So the more subtle we become in our life, in the act of contemplation, all of a sudden the more refined we become, and that takes us into the city part of our life, the gift, and into the city. So refine it, become more subtle. Don't try to race through it. Take your time. It's a brilliant way to go through life.
We'll put all the access details, guys, to Richard Rudd's, website, social media accounts, all that stuff in the property or the description of this YouTube video. So go check that out, and then we'll make sure we reach out and get Richard actually to be a guest on the show, because that will be very exciting, especially for those who are diving in with Frank and I on this journey, who want to try this out. We'll get Richard on the next few months here, and if you are jumping into this journey, write to us. You can reach us at perspectiveshift2020@gmail.com. Let us know, if there's any questions you have about, this experience too. We'll save those questions for when we have Richard on the show.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah. So, thanks for listening to me ramble on about this stuff, because I'm just finding out about myself. But
I love it.
yeah, let us know how you feel about this, and we'll continue doing what me and Mike do.
We'll see you guys next week.
All right. Peace out. Much love.
Perspective Shift is brought to you by fdailycoaching.com. If you're seeking assistance to help navigate you through a difficult time or feel challenged to reach your full potential, Frank Daly can guide you to a perspective that will allow you to utilize your imagination and experience a more fulfilling and satisfying life. Frank has been working with people for over 20 years as a coach, helping them understand the power they have to transform their lives.